Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's a real revenge round when I put Sam Peckinpah's The Killer Elite against Bruce Malmuth's Hard to Kill. And this one was a rough one to get through, so let's just get it on over with. You know, first up we have Sam Peckinpah's The Killer Elite, which is kind of a espionage revenge thriller starring James Caan and Robert Duvall about 3 years after they were in The Godfather together. And, you know, when they're on screen together, it's pure gold. And you really only see this in the beginning because they start out there, they're both like paid hired guns or whatever the fuck for some CIA organization that doesn't really exist and all this stuff. There's a big disclaimer at the beginning of the movie to let you know that this is entirely a fiction type thing. And so like they're hired to protect this dude seeking asylum and stuff, but then like there's a double cross and Robert Duvall ends up disabling James Caan, betraying him and stuff. And then now, like, you know, instead of being the kung fu fighting guy that he is, now his knee is messed up and his shoulder and stuff, so he can't really function. And so he's got to go through rehab. You know, he's basically retired from the duck farm, as they call it, and now he's getting help from this, you know, hot nurse that's getting him back to normal and stuff. And, you know, Peckinpah does this, it shows all this stuff in, you know, his usual laconic way of doing it, you know. And it's, you really see James Caan is a better actor than most people give him credit for. You know, you really see the anguish and just the disappointment in not being able to do what you're able to do, which if you're into heavy-handed metaphors, and most people that study Peckinpah are, you can kind of look at James Caan as the cinematic representation of Peckinpah in this film. And, you know, as far as like doing something you don't really want to do, which you can tell, like, this isn't a movie that he's passionate about, but at this point in his career, he was just happy to be working. You know, his follow-up to Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, a movie where he pretty much did whatever the fuck he wanted to do, and he ended up shitting gold. But with this, you know, especially after you do a movie like that, who the hell's going to hire you to do anything? And then, but he got this film, and, you know, it's based off of a novel, and, you know, Sterling Silliphant co-wrote the script, so there's going to be a little bit of substance. The thing about James Caan is if you give him a good script and a director that knows how to handle actors, you know, he can really run with it and stuff. And so, but once, you know, he kind of gets back to normal, he finds out that his friend, played by Robert Duvall, is plotting some other scheme, so he puts together a little team to kind of counteract that. And, you know, that consists of Bo Hopkins and Burt Young, who most notable playing Paulie and Rocky. And, you know, the banter, there's a lot of humor in the film. You know, like I said, at this point in his career, Peckinpah didn't give a fuck, and really also captures a lot of great scenery in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, there's a lot, the cinematography, and it's great. And of course, Jerry Fielding does the music for it, and that's incredible. And then it all culminates to a ninja free-for-all, or a showdown, if you will, at a boatyard and stuff, or shipyard, I guess, big battleships and all that stuff. But, you know, and everything kind of works out. But even James Caan is still like cracking jokes when there's like a fight. You know, he's very quippy in this, you know, but just it's kind of Peckinpah's way of thumbing his nose at, you know, this kind of film, you know, but he's like just happy to be working type thing, which in a way is what James Caan kind of feels like, you know, helping this dude that doesn't really want to be helped type thing, you know. And, you know, the action at the end is for an action film, it's kind of slow. But when, and of course, with Peckinpah, he really shined with action sequences. And there's maybe about three. The first opening thing is decent. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on. And even when Robert Duvall betrays James Caan in the beginning, it's still, you know, kind of just not much substance there. It doesn't really pack a punch. That middle sequence where they're getting the ambassador dude out, you know, and then Robert Duvall and his gang are shooting at him and stuff. That shit's pretty brilliant. But the ninja fight at the end, you know, especially for somebody that didn't do like kung fu movies, you can kind of tell that, you know, Peckinpah doesn't really know much or give that much of a fuck about martial arts, but he does kind of show it with a respect and everything. And the end is very like anti-establishment, you know, so it's like, yeah, you can't really be mad at a movie like this. It's kind of fun 70s entertainment and stuff, and it's also entertainment made for like mature adults, you know, because for all of its like wild ninja craziness and stuff, there's also some like very poignant scenes, especially when James Caan's still recovering from his injuries and he's walking up those stairs and he can't make it and he has to stop, and he's like, like kids and old ladies passing him. You know, he's not what he once was, and you see that anguish in his face. That right there was the brilliance of Sam Peckinpah, and the acting in it's a lot better than most action films. Which we move forward to Bruce Malmuth's Hard to Kill, which stars Steven Seagal in a similar kind of revenge thing. Only thing is that Steven Seagal, he's a cop in 1983, and he uncovers like this big conspiracy with this senator and stuff. They find out about it. He's got it on tape, audio and visual, but then they seek out to kill him and his family, and he ends up in a coma for like 7 years, and wakes up in 1990, and it just immediately goes back. Once they find out he's alive, they're trying to kill him, and there's a pretty decent sequence of the hospital where he's trying to get out and stuff, but it still doesn't really, like, a lot of the action in the movie is kind of laughable. It's a way for like just to kind of show how badass Steven Seagal is when he's really just kind of a lame ass, but in the acting in it is below mid. Like the dialogue is trash. Like I guess they gave all the good one-liners to like Schwarzenegger or Stallone, because Seagal tries to have those like one-liners and they just fall flat, and then of course he gets helped by Hot Nurse 2, played by Kelly LeBrock, most notable from Weird Science, and she helps him get back to normal. He gets his martial arts back in and everything, learns how to heal so he can hurt and all this kind of, the thing about it is like they don't really like pile that on with the Killer Elite. You see like James Caan training and stuff and just trying to get back to normal, where it's like and it takes a while. You kind of see a progression with Steven Seagal and Hard to Kill. It's like this dude immediately just jumps from a coma to being a fucking karate man again, and most of the time he's just shooting motherfuckers up anyways. And like I said, the action in it's very mid, and you see a couple maybe breaks an arm, throws a dude through some glass and stuff, but it's like one thing that's always bugged me about movies, especially action movies, will fire 100 bullets and not hit a damn thing, and it's like that is another thing about Peckinpah. The way he shows action was like no other. It was more realistic because you actually see the aftermath of the violence and stuff, and it's not just an easy way out where you got some He-Man superhero guy just running and dodging bullets and shit. You got some, real ass people with real ass consequences going on here. And I know action entertainment is not supposed to be, it's fucking fake ass shit, but don't rub my face in it, and especially when you're gonna throw shitty one-liners. And the fucked up thing is the best actor in the movie is probably William Sadler, who plays the corrupt senator. But even that in shit that could have been great, it kind of falls flat, and honestly, if he'd have killed him, it would have been a lot more exciting. It's like, no, we're gonna put him to justice, and it just comes in, and a lot of it's very like predictable, like the pool scene, and he's gonna walk in as soon as they break, and there's gonna be, and he's always like, well, let's play, let's play. It's just fucking lame. So, I mean, this round clearly has to go to the Killer Elite, because that's one thing that the 70s had on the 90s. They were mature. They made movies for mature adults, not children and adults that acted like children type thing. Which, like, Steven Seagal, like, is one of the lamest action stars of all time. They had a pretty decent run in the 90s, but as far as a solid revenge flick, it's a basic exploitation flick that probably would have been better if there was a better director or star in the film, which, case in point, that's why the Killer Elite wins this round, because Sam Peckinpah, one of the greatest, if not the greatest American filmmaker of all time, especially for action, revolutionized the use of slow motion, which he doesn't use it as much here, but he uses it when it's necessary, essentially. And just kind of especially for a movie you can tell he doesn't really want to make, he still attaches a certain professionalism that is parallel to what we see James Caan do in the Killer Elite. And the humor's a lot better in the Killer Elite too. Just James Caan, he's not even trying to be quippy or dole out one-liners. He's just fucking joking around, cracking wise and all that good shit. But for anybody keeping score, that's 38-31. 70s are up by 7, and they're kicking ass. Especially when you got some of the trash that they put out in the 90s, especially like the one Steven Seagal was in. And of course, there was no Peckinpah in the 90s. That man was, nobody could really, some people have come close to matching the energy of Peckinpah, but they still can't. It's like almost there, but you never quite gonna get there, because even when that dude didn't give a fuck, he was still better than most people when they really cared. So if I've said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. I don't care. This is a rough draft to a doctoral thesis that's turned into a scientific obsession to see which decade is better for filmmaking, you know. And who knows, 70s are up by 7 right now. That could change, you know. They got the main event. Tomorrow is going to be The Exorcist versus Stigmata, and you'll see more bonus rounds pop up, you know, spooky season. So it's going to get real frightening and intense and all that good stuff. So, you know, 70s up by 7. I may have been right this whole time, but we still got a long way to go before we know for sure.